Hey everybody, Jake here with TrendSpider to go over some charts into midweek. And boy, do we have some to go over. So obviously, we always go over the broad markets first just to get an idea of where the markets are in general. Starting off with SPY, you can see here that I have anchored the volume profile a little differently than we usually do. And that is actually really inspired by Brian Shannon. Brian Shannon loves to use the anchored VWAP from year to date, month to date. And so I figured, okay, well, let's try to anchor it from the first day of trading in 2020 and see what we see. And you'll see something very interesting. Notice that here there becomes a massive supply zone above when we anchor it from this point. And what we're doing right now on SPY is essentially just going right up into this volume gap, which there's literally no volume at all here. It's almost like a suction, just pulling like a magnet, pulling price up to this supply zone. That does not have to happen tomorrow. It doesn't even have to happen this week. But if you look at some of the other case studies we've done, this is generally the overall kind of view is that over time, this gap in the volume by price will kind of be filled, and the price will kind of magnate up to that supply zone. So interesting to see, especially the raindrop today was pretty strong. I mean, you can see during the second half of the day, a lot of that volume was hitting actually new highs. We know that the second half of the day was hitting new highs simply because you don't have any volume profile on the left here. So if you look here, this is flat. It's not flat on this side. Remember, with the raindrop, the left-hand side means that the volume profile in this bar, that's the volume weighted average price, that represents where that volume was distributed during the first half of the period. So it shows us that we had this flip into the second half of the day where buyers stepped in and actually pushed price higher, and you can see buyers actually supporting supply that was dumped here because you can see this big chunk of volume. So anybody that did sell, we know there was demand to absorb that supply, and that's why we have this little bubble looking thing here. So moving on, that is SPY. The Qs are in a whole different spot. If we go to the hollow candle here, you will see that we actually did not close at all-time highs. We did, I'm pretty sure, yeah, we did hit all-time highs today by like barely anything. And if we didn't, please correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure we did, and it's really hard to see it here. I mean, literally, it's almost a double top. I mean, if just from a visual representation, you really can't see any difference here. So, if we did break above by like a few cents, I'm more concerned about the fact that we just retested all-time highs in a, in a market that is obviously got a lot of liquidity to go into it, but at this point, rotation may be a thing. Do the Qs pull back and some of these other laggards start to, kind of catch a bid? Who knows? We'll have to see. But the fact that the Qs are at all-time highs is just pretty fascinating, I got to admit. And I'm sure not too many people on the bearish side are happy with that. Another thing that I wanted to go over today is IWM, and this is the last broad market chart we'll go over. But this is just an example of how important it is to be able to compare the raindrop versus the hollow candle. So here you can see, let me turn this off. You can see that we did break through this previous high, which was essentially a gap up and then just crashed down. But, it doesn't necessarily look like buyers were in control because we did not close through this red line. However, if we turn on the raindrop and put these side to side, you'll see something very different here. You'll see that a lot of that volume that did get dumped here, let me just make this a little bigger. So all of those people that did, say, okay, well, we just broke through this previous high, I'm getting out. All of those people that sold had somebody there to absorb those shares. Because if sellers came in and nobody was there to buy these shares, you wouldn't see the volume by price up here. You'd see it somewhere lower where buyers actually stepped in. So the fact that you've got this weird kind of wick right above this previous high and then you closed right at the previous high, but then the raindrop shows a lot of that volume in the wick, that is something powerful into tomorrow. Does that mean that we're going to gap up? No, but Does it mean that I'd probably guess this is maybe bullish rather than bearish? Yes. Going into a couple others, I did want to go over Delta because you have a very similar setup here on Delta, except notice here in Delta, you closed through this previous resistance, but you can see how much of that volume is really, at the above the resistance, not at the resistance, above the resistance. And same thing, all of this selling pressure, all of these shares that were sold, somebody was there to buy them up, because if nobody was there to buy the supply above this trend line, you wouldn't see a big kind of almost looks like a balloon, which is what we call it, or a light bulb. So that's why the name is called a balloon. This is why we like to call this a balloon breakout. Not every candle is going to be a balloon breakout. You want to look for these breakouts where there's resistance. If you see, you may say, oh, this looks like a balloon. Well, yeah, but it's not near anywhere significant. I'm looking for these setups where you're breaking out or breaking down of a crucial level of resistance or support. So that is an example on Delta. I did want to turn this over to more of the volume by price, because we did have some absolutely massive moves over the last couple days. Really, the volume shelf just absolutely acting like a huge launch pad here. And even with Delta, you can see if we anchor the volume by price from the January high here, you can see that this was a massive volume shelf being created. And the thing is once you have enough people holding here, you don't actually need demand to increase. You just need supply to decrease. And so that is something that is very powerful, being able to say, I want to know what the volume by price is from this point in time. And that's something that is unique to TrendSpider, because most platforms, the volume by price is simply a function of whatever the history is on the chart. So this is Delta. Going into SQ, this is one from earlier in the week, but you can see same thing. This point I'm anchoring it from this previous high, and we can see since this huge kind of V-looking thing, most of the volume is still holding at this volume shelf, which created kind of a launch pad for price over the last few days, and has been a huge runner because, like I said, you don't necessarily even need demand to increase. You just need supply to dry up, and then if you look at the supply and demand curve, that will drive price up as well. Going into CHWY, pretty much almost an identical setup here. Notice something interesting, right? We've got the anchored volume weighted average price from the March 12th low. We have the volume weighted average price from the highest close on April 27th. You can see that we had this volume shelf, this launch pad forming with price respecting the anchored volume weighted average price. And you just had this huge launch pad off of there. If we go and we want to kind of look at something that's literally showing the same exact setup, almost like exact, you can see here, this is, and let's anchor it from here, this is Walmart. And what I've done with Walmart is I've done a couple things. So I did anchor the volume weighted average price from this capitulation candle. Oops, need to move that over. And then this candle here, which was pretty much a huge move down, reversal, and then continued up. So we can see that the price is really starting to get tight within these anchored VWAPs. And if you remember, just looking at CHWY just a second ago, this literally looks identical to CHWY. So does that mean it's going to do the same exact thing and act the same exact way as CHWY? No, they're two completely different companies, two completely different stocks. But this is a pattern that can form on any company or any stock that you're looking at, and it's something to definitely keep in mind, especially after we've gone over some of these case studies showing that this does like to act as a launch pad. Silver was a good example of this a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. You can see here we anchored the volume by price from this high. This was the launch pad, and I mean, look, we were able to move through this volume gap within literally 2 days because there was no supply above. There was nobody to sell because, people were breaking even up here. So as the price got back to this point, people started breaking even from being, getting in too early. And then you can see the price consolidated at this shelf, and then you had your move up higher. Notice here that we do still have a gap up on silver, so that's something to keep in mind. And gold is one that actually has a very similar setup to Walmart, except in this particular case, you are starting to see a little bit of a breakdown here. You notice that these two alpha trends anchored VWAPs from this March 31st and April 1st kind of pullback here. Notice that this was the first time we actually closed through this. And so the fact that we did close below it is a little bearish. I mean, however, if you do look at gold in the past, they do like to shake the tree before moving it up. So this is something that also is showing a Walmart kind of setup. But just because this is showing this does not mean that the price can't go down. I mean, something can come out that makes gold drop. Just because you have a volume shelf does not mean you're guaranteed to get these liftoffs like you have seen in some other ones, like Boeing. I mean, talk about just this thing finally materializing. We've been watching this volume shelf form for literally like 2 or 3 months. And finally, we broke through the alpha trends anchored VWAP from this February high. And you can see just how much volume was creating a shelf here for the launch pad that essentially just absolutely finally happened today. So, will this continue? Who knows? I don't know. But this is a very strong candle. And, there was a lot of people that didn't think Boeing was going to make it just because of the situation. And so I'm sure there were quite a few people that were not happy about this blasting up. And I'm sure those people helped the price continue to move up by covering their shorts. So that is Boeing. Going into GE, this is one of my favorite case studies of this week. And this is one that I traded simply just based on this. So, and remember, when we talk about what we're trading, this is simply my personal trade. Everybody on the TrendSpider team has a different way of trading. And remember, TrendSpider is simply just a technical analysis software. So this is not, go enter this trade with us. This is showing you guys that, we are actually traders. We do this stuff for, mostly a hobby because it's impossible to do it full time if we're trying to, get TrendSpider where we want. But we still trade, and this is a really cool example of price pulling back literally almost exactly from the anchored VWAP here, and then filling all these two gaps below, bouncing right off the volume shelf, which is in conjunction with the anchored VWAP from the May 15th low, and then you've just got this big move up. The thing about this in GE is GE and Boeing like to move together, and if this did break, notice that we anchored the volume weighted average price from the February 12th high on Boeing. And Boeing, if we were just doing this relative to the anchored VWAP, this is Boeing's candle like right here. Like it's way ahead of GE relative to that February 12th anchored VWAP. So does GE still have room to move up? Who knows, but I do know gaps do like to fill, and there's 4 of them above. And so we'll just have to see what happens here. But this is one of the laggards that has just taken its sweet time over the last 3 months, and a really cool example of finally getting a bounce off that volume shelf from the anchored volume by price on February 12th. That is about all we have for tonight, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be posting charts tonight, so make sure to check those out. And hopefully this video was helpful to make you understand TrendSpider a little better and some of the features that you can take advantage of. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and we put videos out at least twice a week, so make sure to check those out when they come out, and you can even put on your notifications when we put something else new out. So thank you again for watching. Everybody, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, hello@trendspider.com, and we'll see you this weekend for the Sunday show.